Tonight. This is a very exciting evening for the English department because, as the program tells you, this is our first annual, we hope, literary night. And we are thrilled to have members of the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior classes reading for you tonight. It's so important for every writer to find his or her own voice, to find out what he or she wants to say. And then it's so very important to have an audience that will listen sympathetically and empathetically, maybe laugh a little, maybe cry a little, but respond. Now, most of these writers are somewhere between fear, terror, and wishing they had never come tonight. So I've had to promise them that you're going to be very nice to them. So please be nice to them, because this is difficult. If you think about it, when you write something and then you read it, you are really bearing your soul and giving a little of yourself to other people. And that takes a lot of nerve. It really does. So I admire every one of these people who is here. You can see their names on the program, and we'll try to go pretty much in order. I'm also very grateful to the members of the English department who have supported and been part of this endeavor from the beginning. Sue McDonough and Jack Griffin, Diana Lombardo, Chris Began. I think that's everybody who is here tonight, and the other members who are not here have been equally supportive, just weren't able to be here. So enjoy the evening. This is how we would like to have it go. We will go about halfway, and then we will stop. The coffee will have perked by that time. The punch will be cool. The cake is ready. We have all kinds of goodies. And during intermission, we have a couple of special things for you to look at. We have a couple of games for you to watch that are based on mythology, and we also have a little computer program for you to watch. So that might be a good thing to walk around with a cup of coffee and a piece of cake or something and enjoy that. We also have a double treat tonight, and that is that through Robert Post of Wakefield, there are 10 Japanese students visiting Wakefield High School this week. And if it all goes well, I think 2 of them, our visitors, are going to recite some poetry to us. So I think that will be exciting as well. So again, we begin the program, and I'll ask John Perkins to start.
Hi, before I start, I have to say this because, well, I put a lot of work into it, and so did Alyssa and Megan. We have our literary magazines over there all ready to sell. I think you'll like them. They came out great this year. And before I start my poem, I want to give a little bit of background, because I based it off of a book that I read over the summer called A Dragon Lover's Treasury, which was written for me. And what I found when I was reading it is that it used dragons. It was a study in humanism. It used dragons to show aspects of people one at a time. It was really wonderful. And so this was a response to that, called What is the Dragon? I am Wilbur Wright. I am Orville Wright. From our efforts, flight was achieved. We are the wings of the dragon. I am Nicholas Joseph Cugnot. I am William Morrison. I am Jean-Joseph Etienne Lenoir. I am Richard Trevithick. Our creations are the automobiles and locomotives, allowing great movement. We are the legs of the dragon. I am Genghis Khan. I am Alexander the Great. We kill to conquer. We are the claws of the dragon. I am Adolf Hitler. I am Napoleon I. We devour all that is in our path. We are the jaws of the dragon. I am Harry S. Truman. I ended the Second World War in 2 flashes of light. I am the destructive and fiery breath of the dragon. I am Socrates. I am Sir Isaac Newton. I am Albert Einstein. Our intelligence has brought about miraculous advances. We are the mind of the dragon. I am Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am Mahatma Gandhi. Ours is the gift to see a different and wondrous future. We are the eyes of the dragon. I am every human being who has ever lived, breathed, and died upon this earth. I am the body, the soul, and the life of the dragon.
And now some sophomores are going to read to you some winter imagery poetry that they wrote during one of those 9,000 or 10,000 storms we had this summer.
Hi. We'd like to recite some of the original poetry written by our class, Mrs. McDonough's B Block Sophomore Honors English. We reflect on the winter that has plagued us so persistently. We hope that you enjoy our winter imagery poetry.
My name is Kyla McRae, and I'll be reading a poem written by Eric Loritz entitled Carpe Diem, Seize the Day. The icy boldness of the Aquarius wren arrives but once a year, lets splendid spots sporting splendid times and fun. The nameless water of countless deposits may freeze but once a lifetime. That time to be a special mixture of love, hope, earnestness, and a touch of magic. This is meant to bring together the people of all to distract and bewilder, yet give rebirth to and spare. This wizardry is tended to be taken in, also readily acted upon until the end of time disappears. For if the time disappears, the magic fades, and the aura dissipates, the return necessitates the same. As quickly as the frosty snow fades, with the coming of the lion, the savior diminishes. In its place, the weeper remains of a rare frozen dream, and are able to share with it the experience of a lifetime.
Make sure you adjust the microphone so it's coming right at you. We don't want to miss a word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Romano, and I'd like to read a poem called Through the Pain by Alison Guerrier. I am in a safe haven, a darkened room, illuminated by the glow of the crackling fire that darts and dances in the fireplace, whose heat, a comfort and necessity, seems to cover and envelop my entire body as if it were an invisible quilt. I sit alone, no television, no radio, no phone. The window, my lone image of the world. Nature itself is a spectacle outside the willful wind that moans like a lonely ghost, scatters the pure white crystals all around. Nearby stands the towering verdant pine that seems to shiver cowardly from the bitter cold air settling in. And up above, high in the sky, sits the moon that shines full and bright, holding control of the night. I see the essence of nature, harmony, serenity, and peace from the inside looking out.
Hi, my name is Lacey Bucheski, and I'd like to read the poem The Window of Memories by Beth Parkins. Sometimes I wake up cold at night and gaze out the window. I see the same sight each time more beautiful. Crystal snowflakes delicately cling and crash to the soft, clean blanket of cottony snow. And I remember being outside, having snow fall on my lashes and in my hair, just so that I feel like a pristine princess in a robe of velvet snow. The ice-glazed house across the street looks like a fairy tale castle, recalled from my favorite bedtime story of years gone by. In the trees, like the soldiers protecting my elementary mansion from the cold biting wind and causatic sky. I recall vividly trudging through snow, left unshoveled carelessly, and the hot cocoa waiting at home, just for me. Fond memories flood into my soul, and I drift off to sleep, no longer cold.
Hi, my name is Carla Zangariello, and I'd like to read the poem Shelter by Amy LeClaire. I step down mounting the well-known path. The day's happenings fall upon me with the weight of the storm. Salty rivulets form icy trails. The frigid cold seeps through my clothes like chilled water. Like the icy glass, it shakes from branches. The wind slices into my flesh. The sting disappears. I am numb. My eyes glaze over like a glossy frozen pond. I do not hear the packed snow crunch with each step. I do not remember walking. My thoughts are elsewhere. Through the wintry scene I pass, houses like bright Christmas packages wrapped in lights, sharply contrasting the dull canvas on which they are painted. Wondering who's inside, but not really caring, I reach my door. I draw a breath. The warmth burns my throat. Slowly, puddles form round my feet. Pain sears through my body as it begins to thaw. The window reveals to me the mesmerizing snow, blanketing the ground like a quilt of white feathers, and sheets of glossy ice like crystal fairies asleep in the trees. The fierce jaws of winter beasts form cages, but not for me. I am home. I am safe.
Hi, my name is Nellie Taylor, and Amy LeClaire couldn't be with us tonight, so I'm going to read one of my poems called The Warmth in Winter. The bitter chill of the wind carries the minute crystalline structure far off from where it began its journey through the cold to the cold. The tiny chip flits and floats as though it were on a string, being tugged and pulled as if in a dream, surrounded by thousands like it. Finally reaching the ground, the miniature piece of ceiling from the celestial space above joins its brothers on the floor below, blending beautifully, and now called snow. But the fragment of ice that was once alone is now surrounded and not being blown around by the winds of icy cold. The Arctic sliver wishes to stand out, yet can't help but to blend. The others can try, but simply cannot mend the feelings of the flake that wishes to send its emotional warmth to an ice-covered sheen of a world that needs it so. The world, so fully encrusted by the harsh winter wind, is afraid to accept the soothing rays of the sun, a sun that would melt away the ice and snow into into a gush of red and orange glow. Into a hue of green and blue would this world evolve and grow. So tall would it never be recognizable to the shard that wished so much for it to be. Now the chip can see that one cannot change the world alone, but the world must change as a whole on its own, in small intervals so as not to fall into the hole of blackness, ice, and cold, the frigid world with hot feelings so bold.
Oh, nice. And next, Erin Walsh. Erin's been fighting laryngitis today, so we'll make sure the microphone is nice and close. Switch in there. All right.
My story is called Could It End This Foolish Journey? And I'm sick, so. Suicide. Could it end this foolish journey of life? Michaela glanced about her darkened science room wearily. The light from the television splashed on the faces of her classmates, none of which looked too enthralled by the dull movie. The musty wood smell of the desk matched her bleak mood. Surrounded by her peers in an overcrowded room, which was beginning to smell faintly of sweat, she felt lonelier than she had ever been in her life. The deep, throbbing ache in her heart was not new to her. Neither were the dark and empty thoughts that skittered relentlessly through her brain. Although she could not understand these feelings, Michaela was beginning to recognize them for what they were. They accompanied the weight gain, fatigue, and hopelessness that she suffered throughout every winter. "Why should I care about this?" Michaela muttered under her breath. Her semi-cute lab partner shot her a knowing and an extremely sympathetic smile. His eyes, the color of the midnight sky, were slightly glazed over by boredom. "Oh, I'm sure he knows what I was really talking about," Michaela thought sarcastically. She realized she was being unfair, though. Everyone seemed to think she had the perfect life, too. She was smart, pretty, and popular. Michaela was the one everyone counted on to lead them in anything, from sports to saving the world. She was the all-American girl from a wealthy family. Michaela knew many people envied her, and also that no one suspected her depressive disorder. No matter how long she spent examining it, her problem would never go away without her prescriptive drugs. These feelings of dependency and not being in control were unsettling to her. The piercing bell invaded her thoughts like a hysterical laugh at a funeral. As she gathered her books to leave, someone bumped her arm and millions of papers scattered on the floor. "Sorry," the bumper mumbled as they continued to hurry out of the room. Michaela felt a sudden rage as she stooped to gather her fallen papers. The rage was new to her, and she was frightened by it. It made her feel like murdering the stupid person who had banged into her. The rage was unexplainable, but it disappeared as quickly as it had come. Michaela realized that these mood swings were becoming more and more frequent, and it made her worry. Michaela rushed to her locker, hoping to avoid her friends. Lately they had been annoying her for no apparent reason. She could not stand to be around them because their problems seemed so trivial. Their constant chatter grated harshly on her newly exposed nerves. Distancing herself from them was her only solution. Michaela left the school from the side door and stalked briskly into the open air. She reached the blessed sanctuary of her car, and the motor hummed to life. The purring car crept stealthily out of the crowded parking lot. Michaela watched the after-school activities begin, and it was like seeing a carnival being set up. The sports players rushed for the gym. The smokers dashed across the street to share gossip with fellow lung cancer patients. The music players went to get their instruments, and some people just hung around or went home. Michaela switched on the radio to her favorite station and forced herself to sing along. However, the tempo was too upbeat and she felt a migraine coming on. The radio was snapped off with a sharp click, and the car pulled into her driveway a few minutes later. Her answering machine light was blinking when she walked into the house. Michaela pushed play and outspilled her mother's frazzled voice. "Sorry, kiddo. I won't be home for dinner tonight. There's money in my drawer for pizza. I guess this is life. Do you know what I mean, Jellybean? Well, I'll be home later. Love you. Bye." So Michaela had the house to herself. Her dad was away on business and she was an only child. Being an only child had not really affected her before, but now she was lonely. She wished she had a brother or sister to talk to. She got it from the couch where she had been sitting. There had been 5 messages and one was a prank call. Prank calls always freaked her out. Michaela could not help wondering why in the world you would call someone and not talk. It seemed kind of pointless. Of course, everything seemed kind of pointless these days. Even life had a questionable purpose. Michaela shuffled tiredly into the bathroom. She stared miserably at her reflection. The soft light from the ever-glowing nightlight only served to darken the half-moon circles under her eyes. The hair on her head stuck out haphazardly with static. She concentrated forlornly on the monstrous zit that was growing at her temple. As Michaela stared at it, the zit magnified, grew more red and pussy, and looked like it might burst. The explosion would spray milky white pus covering the interior of the bathroom. She would drown in the blood and pus as it spewed like sweet, sticky molasses on the floor. Certainly drowning would prevent her from ever looking at her ugly reflection ever again. "Ah," she said with a shiver. The shiver shook off the gross fantasy like a dog shaking water off his coat. Suddenly Michaela turned and closed the door, the noise like an explosion in her ears. The door was the final physical barrier between herself and the outside world, a cruel world that she had already had enough of. Momentarily the voices would begin, the dangerous ones, with their smooth caramel suggestions, gently urging her to look around and make use of any sharp object. Michaela sat on the toilet and tried to block out the voices by covering her ears. She soon realized that the action was futile. The voices were inside her head. Michaela rocked back and forth, crying softly. "Hurry up. Look at that razor. Think about how nicely it will feel skimming along your wrists. Slit your wrist, baby. Why deal with the pain? Come on, you little moron. You'll never amount to anything. You're better off dead, Michaela. You lousy, wimpy scum. Do it." The voices grew sharper and more insistent, pressuring and demanding that she kill herself. "No," Michaela whimpered like a caged animal who knows death is on the way. "I don't want to die." Her pulse raced and beads of sweat were sliding down her deathly pale face. She began to hyperventilate and the panic started, threatened to suffocate her. Sobs broke out between airless gasps for breath. The oxygen would not go in or out. It was trapped in her throat and it made her lightheaded. The bathroom began to swerve in a bluish haze. Her eyes could only focus on the razor as the bathroom spun around her. It became bigger and bigger. The curve of the sharp razor smiled at her. It was alive. The gleaming razor left spots in her eyes when she struggled to close them, almost like the spots you get after someone has taken your picture. It began to sculpt toward her and she tried to crawl back against the wall. Michaela was paralyzed and thought, "This can't be happening." Then she realized that she had moved the razor. It was she who had taken it off the shelf. Her hand glided into the smooth, pale flesh at her wrist. Michaela fought for control over her own body. She had stopped hyperventilating but was now holding her breath. She was actually wondering what would happen. Her eyesight grew fuzzy and black. Then she passed out. Michaela awoke a few minutes later with a slight headache. She got slowly up from the floor and picked up the razor. She calmly placed it on the shelf and left the bathroom to start her homework. Michaela had fought and won this exact battle today and every day before. The real question is, will she win it tomorrow?
What a richness of talent we have in this school. All right, let's move on. And Jen, are you here? Jen McNeil? Jen is flying in from basketball practice, so we will wait a moment for her. So now we have a musical interpretation connected with the novel A Patch of Blue. And so Ryan Curran and Chris Nelson are going to perform for us.
A Patch of Blue was written by Elizabeth Cata. It is a story about a blind young white woman who finds love in the arms of a black man to get away from his dysfunctional family. The black man's name is Gordon. Our presentation will be an interpretation of Selena's feelings, the rise and falls throughout the novel.
Talk about the artist finding his voice, or finding their voices. Wonderful. And now Leah Pasquale is going to explain a kind of special piece of artwork connected with her English literature class, and Mrs. McDonough is going to help her out.
One of the techniques that the students use sometimes in some of the English classes to crystallize their thoughts about symbol or characterization or imagery is the storyboard. And after they do this, they will go on to a writing assignment. And Leah has a storyboard she'd like to share with you from Ethan Frome.
Thank you, Ms. McDonough. The storyboard relates to the novel Ethan Frome. Ethan is married to a woman named Zena who is sickly. Zena hired Maddie, a distant relative, to help out with household chores. Ethan started to look toward Maddie for some liveliness. Their relationship started to grow, but Ethan was not sure what to do. He loved Maddie, but felt a responsibility towards Zena. Zena started to suspect Ethan and Maddie's relationship, and she was jealous. Zena decided that Maddie should leave.
We asked the students to consider different things like color, placement on the storyboard, choice of quotation, and so forth. And Leah's going to explain her use of the different symbols and so on. Would you like me to hold it?
For this, I use the hat because it represents Maddie and how kind she is and warmth. For color, and the quotation I used is a bit of hopeful young life, which is what Maddie is. Mm-hmm. And Ethan's in the middle because he's split between Zena and Maddie. And for Zena, I used a black hat with ice actually sugar, but I used it to show cold and gray, to show her dark. And the quotation I used for it is, she's a pauper that's hung on to us all after her father's done his best to ruin us. I've kept her here a whole year. It's somebody else's turn now. That shows how Zena's getting sick of her and that she doesn't want her around anymore. And that's about it.
All right. Thank you.
And now we're going to have Michael Peroni, assisted by Cara Green and Evie Camuses, who are going to finish a play in a way that the original playwright didn't finish it, and their teacher, Mrs. Lombardo, will tell you a little bit more about that.
Hi, I'm Diana Lombardo. I'm an English teacher here at the high school. And before Michael and later Marcy present their original Act 5s, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background so you're able to put the acts in some sort of context. The play, A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen, was written in the late 1800s, and at the time it really scandalized the Victorian world because it was a highly controversial theme of a woman leaving her husband, leaving her small children, and embarking on a life of her own. When the play ends, Henrik Ibsen's original play, Nora Helmer leaves her family, leaves her home, slams the door, very symbolically, on her former life, and goes forward, we know not where. And what I asked my students to do is write an original Act 5 and sort of explore maybe some of the options. What happened to Nora when she left? And so both plays involve Nora Helmer, who is the woman who leaves, and her closest confidant and school chum, Christine Lind.
The scene. A different room, furnished tastefully with a feminine touch. The area is small, yet cozy, just large enough for 2 armchairs, a small, simple table, a full bookcase 3 shelves high, a china cupboard, and a small stove off to one side. There is a large window next to the stove. To the right, a door leading to an entrance hall, and to the left, a doorway fitted with draperies held back by a gold cord. It is several nights since Nora's departure from Torvald.
It is late now. Perhaps you ought to get some rest.
Why? What is the significance of tomorrow more than any other of the past several days that I need to be rested? It will go most likely as have the others. I suppose I will just sit here and think.
Do not think too seriously. You are still in quite a state of confusion.
Confusion? Am I? Does one do as I have done and contemplate what I have contemplated out of mere confusion? I know perfectly well what has taken place, as well as my reasons for doing so. I have moved a mountain, and in doing so I have created a canyon. I wish for freedom, but with everything comes a price. I knew that before I started.
You never imagined what the price would be. Do any of us ever know the true costs of our dreams? No, we cannot. If that were so, we would be playing the role of God. You did what you thought best, for you, for Torvald, and for the children.
Torvald? Perhaps, but was it best? I took away his little skylark, and left him with only a motherless nest to brood over. And what of the children? What will they see in their mother's eyes? Perhaps love or understanding, or perhaps nothing.
They will see that you did what was best for their futures, and they will appreciate it, given time. Perhaps it is not too late to...
Return? Heavens, no. You suggest returning to all that of which I despise, and spend so long trying to escape from? Now I am never to be anyone's doll ever again.
Is that how you want it?
How am I to know? This is a new position for me.
How is that?
I have never known what it is to truly love, or to be loved. I was just a curiosity and a convenience, waiting with a painted-on smile for every beck and call, as a doll waiting to be played with. Now there is no one to call, no one to paint a smile for, no one to wait for. Now I am free to do as I please. But how do I know what that is?
How?
I have spent my life pleasing my father, and then Torvald. I have never had any goals to reach for. I have accomplished my heart's only recent desire.
Have you absolutely none?
To speak of.
My one desire was pulled away from me by the hands of fate. Maybe it is best to have none. No desires to be stolen away.
I did once have someone desire me. I, however, was too much the fool to see what clearly was apparent to the outside world.
Dr. Rank?
Yes, it is he that I speak of. He who cherished me for so long without a word. How could I have been so foolish not to see? And how did I respond to his deep confession? With contempt.
Do not bother with such things now. You should be resting. It is fierce outside, isn't it? The wind on the trees seems so brutal. I'd best check the shutters. They often come unhitched. Stoke the fire, would you? Thank you. I shan't be but a moment.
She exits to the left. Nora rises out of the chair and walks to the stove. She looks out of the window and stops. With a brusque motion, she turns back to the bookshelves to retrieve the cards with black crosses given to her by Rank. She looks at them for a moment, as if contemplating something dark. With a sense of purpose, she picks up a pen, dips it in ink, and writes a short message on the back of one of the cards. Nora then places both cards into an envelope, seals it with candle wax, and resumes her seat in the armchair. Mrs. Lynde re-enters, and Nora jumps to her feet.
My dear, what is it?
I need a favor of you.
Of course, dear. What can I do?
I need you to deliver this to Torvald. Will you?
Why, yes. When I go to the bank tomorrow, I will.
No, now.
What?
It must be delivered immediately. Oh, please, Christine. You cannot possibly understand the urgency of the whole thing.
What thing?
It is all there, as clear as black and white.
Nora, what on earth are you doing?
I'm following my heart. Please, just promise me you'll deliver it, and you won't open it until you're with Torvald.
But...
Please?
Very well.
Mrs. Lynde exits to the right. When the door closes, Nora immediately calms down. She proceeds to the stove. The fire has become merely embers. Nora opens the large window. Then with one quick breath, she blows out the candle on the table. The room is very still. She goes again to the window and sees Mrs. Lynde running off in the distance. Finally, Nora sits again in the cushioned chair. With her eyes closed, she waits for slumber and Jack Frost to take her away.
Sometimes it takes a writer many pages to say what he or she wants to say, and sometimes it takes just a few sentences to capture in excellent description a moment or a place or a person. So scattered through tonight's program, you will hear some short but very vivid pieces created by students in the writing lab.
Hi, my name's Carrie Sullivan. I'm reading a description paragraph about a bakery. Ding-a-ling-ling, the bells chatter against the doors. People are going in and out. The smell of fresh-made bread and desserts get people anxious and hungry. Some people's eyes are puffed out of their head as their mouth waters for each and every goodie that has been made. People's hands are pressed against the warm glass, pointing at what they want. Ring, clatter, clatter, as the register makes yet another purchase. With all the people waiting in line, the employee yells out, "Who's next, please?"
I think we've all been in that bakery. And now we move to another kind of writing, to satirical writing. A long time ago, a man named Jonathan Swift saw a terrible problem and didn't know the best way to let the world know how awful it was. He thought just talking about it in a straightforward way would probably do little. So what he decided to do about the problem was to write an outrageous solution to it, one that was so outrageous that people would perhaps get the point and pay attention. So some of the students you will see tonight have written what's called a modest proposal. And what they are going to do is suggest a remedy, and I think you will hear the bite of satire in the remedies that they suggest for their problems, big and small. Liz?
Hello. I have a modest proposal for the development and advancement of committees. People in America America and other democratic nations are truly blessed that their welfare is so well provided for. Citizens can have any concerns of theirs addressed to committees, wonderful institutions which work to improve life, either locally or nationally. However, there are people who fail to realize what committees are. To have a truly successful committee, the group must meet certain qualifications. Only certain kinds of people can actually make a committee work. The actual definition of a committee is a group of people who work together to stall and hinder a project for as long as they possibly can, for the general good of the people. Individuals who love to talk but cannot listen and have a degree in BS are perfectly suited for a position on the committee. It is even better if they can major in minors and spend hours on details that are of little or no consequence, or, better still, if they can propound on abstract ideas or theories that have little or no relevance to the topic whatsoever. Members should not have a clear idea of the purpose and goal of their committee, for it provides hours of detailed debate and discussion, after which the group may actually have a clearer view of their responsibilities. It is important to remember that the motto of a successful committee is reiterate, reiterate, reiterate. Newly nominated chairmen should not fear if the committee is unsuccessful at first. It probably means they're trying too hard. There are several steps which can be taken which will assure a committee success. First, the members must choose a title. To aid the public, these titles should be very explicit. The title, Committee for the Comprehensive Local Investigation, Theoretical Postulation, and Universal Application of the Alien Influences on the Fire Ant Population of Waxahachie, Texas, known as the CCPIT-PUAA-IFAP-WT for short, fully informs the public of the group's goals, intentions, expertise, and purpose. This process will probably take a while. It may be advisable to hire several outside agencies to present their ideas, for a committee must examine a wide variety of options before refusing them all in the search for the perfect title. Next, the members must choose a slogan which should inspire them in their position. Generally, this slogan should be a guideline to the group, such as the slogan, "No new ideas." To implement this particular slogan, for example, a committee may choose to adopt a previous agenda from a related committee. The older, the better. Finally, the committee ought to elect officers to aid the chairperson in his or her position. Secretaries are especially important, for someone must take down the minutes to be read at the next meeting to reiterate for the people what has already been discussed at the last 6 meetings or so. Sometimes, however, committees still have a hard time getting started. Sometimes people are too impatient and desire to rush through decisions. This cannot be allowed. Important decisions must be discussed for months, if not years. To encourage such diligent behavior, prizes and awards should be handed out to individuals who continually discuss and rehash plans and ideas. The longer, the better. Committees cannot afford to be hasty in their decisions, and individuals who persist in being impatient ought to be penalized in some way. After the committee is well established, members may want to consider nominating other people to join their committee. When examining possible candidates, members should keep in mind that the larger, more diverse a group, the more successful that committee is, for it is the group's responsibility to examine every aspect of and every solution to their goal. Committees must fulfill the public's expectations and perform their duties with much thought and insight. Members cannot lose sight of the fact that committees are admired for their commitment to quality and their devotion to details. Their decisions often carry much weight and influence a large number of people. Remember these goals and never feel pressured for time. Thank you.
Has a familiar ring, doesn't it? Our next performer is also going to give us that moment of vivid description, and this is Tracy Havey. Tracy?
Hi, my name is Tracy Havey, and I'm reading my descriptive paragraph, Montrose Ice Cream. The sound of loud machines, people asking small or large. Colored ice cream melted on the floor, Jimmy spilled over the counters. Broken cones tossed in the trash. The chill in the air, the sweet aroma of the ice cream shop. Oreo needs to be filled, someone shouted. We are low on strawberry syrup, someone else chimes in. Along with the constant sounds of the cash register, the cheerful laughter from excited children fills our ears. Tea and couples stand around eating their cold, flavorful ice cream. Others stand in the monstrous line, their skins shining with sweat. Feeling overwhelmed, I take my small window with a smile. Can I help someone?
And sometimes authors have to be not just one person, but two. And so for the next presentation, Al Sanchez-Wasso is going to be Al Sanchez-Wasso, and he's also going to be Jessica Wiley. And he is going to read an essay that he and she worked on. Am I right, Mrs. McDonough?
Yes, I think people need to have the mic closer to.
Okay, still having problems? All right, put it up nice and close.
Good evening. My name is Al Sanchez-Wasso. Right in? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to read Jessica's essay. She regrets that she couldn't make it tonight. And her essay is on man's inhumanity to man, which is based on a study of several poems that we worked on and also 3 works that we read. To begin, it says, in our British World Literature class this semester, we have read 3 novels focusing on man's inhumanity to man. In 2 works we read the personal accounts of 2 Holocaust survivors. In the 3rd novel, we read about a man sent to do a job who discovered evil in a society. Night by Elie Wiesel, I Promised I Would Tell by Sonia White, and Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness all present insightful lessons about man's inhumanity to man. Night is the life story of a young boy torn from his home and forced into slave labor camps. Elie Wiesel is separated from his mother in the beginning of this ordeal. Having only his father to protect him, Elie must learn to survive with little food in deadly conditions. The Nazis have taken his house and all his neighbors' houses. Just as a young boy, this ordeal was very hard for Elie to understand. At the camps, people were worked to death. Some people were just executed right in front of everyone. Elie was a strong boy, and he learned quickly what was not going to be tolerated. The whole time he was imprisoned, Elie clung to his father. The two protected and helped each other. When things looked really bad for Elie, he knew he would only survive with his father. When they were separated for work, they always made sure to return at the end of the day to each other. When Elie's father got sick, the boy was very afraid. Elie struggled to keep him up so he could pass inspection and survive longer. In the end, when times got worse, they had to move. With his father dying and his own foot in bad shape, Elie realized he would have to take care of himself or die right along with his father. This was the hardest time for Elie, and he became indifferent. Life no longer mattered to him, only food. Surviving made him aware of what he had to do. He was a changed person at the end. He lost faith, along with most Jewish people. There were many people who sat back and watched the Nazis take the Jews. People fearing their own lives did nothing. When the Allies came and liberated all the sick, tired people, they were not considered heroes. The people only wondered why it took so long for all the world to notice this tragedy going on around them. Even the most forgiving man feared he would go through life bitter, believing this horror could have been prevented. Second work, I Promised I Would Tell, describes the life of Sonia and her sister, Blanca. Sonia's story is like Elie's, torn from her home, separated from her parents, and made to survive in impossible conditions. Sonia had Blanca, her sister, for support. Sonia grew to believe, like Elie, that her sister was her life. This is true. The girls helped and protected each other through all the other selections, the moves, and the work. When Blanca found a job at the camp where she could get small pieces of food, she gave them to Sonia. When Blanca got sick, Sonia would do anything to help her. When Sonia tried to give her sister more food, she was punished. The girls went into hospitals together, and they survived together throughout their ordeal. Sonia realized that she needed her sister because all her family was gone. Her mother was taken from her back in her hometown. This is the worst part, when she must know that she is not safe anywhere. The family could have left when the situation was not yet out of control, but they had faith in God and man that nothing like this could ever happen. The people of the world let all these millions down. The Holocaust will never be forgotten, and the debt we owe the Jewish society can never be repaid. Finally, The Heart of Darkness describes a man looking for a job, who finds a hidden tragedy. Marlowe gets a job with a shipping company to travel into the heart of Africa and run the trade. Arriving in Africa, he meets many people who know about the society deep in Africa being made civilized. A man named Kurtz has taken over. He is sacrificing natives, claiming to be helping them and helping England. When Marlowe gets closer to the heart of darkness and closer to the truth about Kurtz, his own life is in danger. Sailing into Africa on a decrepit steamboat, he has with him savages and professional men. The spoiled meat for the savages is thrown overboard by the white men for their convenience. The savages are starved, yet do not eat the men. This shows Milo the civilization already possessed by these people. Kurtz has made himself into a god. The natives worship him while he exploits them. When Milo gets to Kurtz, the latter is dying. On his deathbed, he still holds on to the idea he is helping these savages. He knows he is trying to control them. This whole company was formed deep in Africa and run by all these men while all of Europe thought the adventure was good. Having seen what really went on, Milo was shocked at all the indifference that these greedy white men had toward the natives. This was an example of what can happen to man if some men, for selfish motives, control the ideas and lives of other human beings. In all the works, the evil is committed by some man or group of men on their fellow man or whole society. This is going to be written about as long as this type of injustice continues.
33, 22, 33.
To the main office. Now that these two Holocaust survivors have told their stories, all the people who were not affected by the Nazis and the people who were indifferent are becoming aware. As the whole world becomes aware, we realize that this should never be allowed to happen again, yet we fear it could be happening still in places like Bosnia. The prejudice that we have against other people, not like ourselves, is noticed by everyone at some point. This awareness should be the first step in overcoming evil. It has not eliminated anything so far. Now that we have realized man's inhumanity to man, we must find a way to eliminate it. Thank you.
Our next presenter is a freshman, and he has written a story called A New Planet. Listen very carefully to the end of this story. I think there'll be a little surprise. Todd?
Hi, my name is Todd Sanderson, and I'm going to read my short story titled A New Planet. I'm ruler of the world, ha ha ha, Alan screamed. He was standing among thousands of carolling forms and giving off a glow like some demented Christmas decoration. The forms began to emit strange whimpering noises as he towered before them. The noises turned into a buzzing chant, and Alan woke at the start. His alarm was buzzing. It was 5 o'clock. Oh man, Alan grunted. These dreams are getting weirder and weirder. Alan hit his snooze bar and dozed for a few more minutes. Somehow he willed himself to get out of bed and into the shower. At the base, the general waited in the windowless conference room. One by one, four men entered the room. After glancing impatiently at his watch, the bald general barked. Where have you four been? This mission has been scheduled to take off at 7 o'clock. You all turned up late. My talk will have to be brief. You four will be representing our great nation on the scientific mission. Yeah, right, Alan thought as the general droned on. I only became an astronaut because my family was killed, not because of all that represent for country junk. So make us proud once you reach the new planet, men. It's time to suit up. The 4 astronauts left the briefing room and made their way to the preparation rooms. I can't believe it, Alan. We're actually going there. A new planet. We'll be famous. The navigator Mark hollered to Alan as he was putting on his radio receiver. Yeah, if the technology works. Do you know how easily we could die out there, get sucked into space and implode, blow up, get attacked by aliens? Alan shuddered. One thing goes wrong in a hyperdrive and we'll be floating home, Mr. Navigator. Give me a break, you pessimist. They've tested this stuff thousands of times. Mark finished attaching his helmet to his suit. Alan shrugged in response to Mark's remark. Alan and the others finished putting on their suits as well. The 4 men walked into the morning sunlight. The rocket was waiting for them across the pavement on the launching pad. Walking across the concrete expanse was the chore with their heavy suits. They soon reached the huge craft that was to take them on their journey. The rocket had an elevator set up inside a grid of metal at its side. Alan and the others stepped onto the elevator. Uneasily, he looked back at the ground as the elevator moved upward. They boarded the rocket and scrunched themselves into their tiny seats. Within a few minutes, the engines beneath them rumbled and the whole rocket shook. Alan could see the ground speeding away as they roared into space. Crushing G-forces made it hard to breathe, and Alan felt like he was going to throw up. After what seemed an eternity, there was finally silence. The group in the rocket turned their radios on. There's a familiar voice crackling in their ears. Explorer, Explorer, come in. Explorer here, sir. Everything's go. Engines okay, no external damage. Perfect, the general said. In a few minutes, our contact will be lost due to the rotation of the Earth. In the meantime, turn on the TV. You're on the news. Alan flipped on the screen in the cabin. The mission is set to travel to a newly discovered planet to do scientific observations. The planet, classified as M3, is believed to have a breathable atmosphere and inferior life forms. Pilot Major David Newman, 37, co-pilot Alan Garrison, 23, the navigator Captain Mark Nye, 25, and the science expert Dr. Shane Marcus, 28, are the 4 members of the mission. In other news, the president, the anchorman was cut off abruptly, for the transmission was cut off. Whoa, that was spooky, Alan said. Don't worry, David replied. The general told us about the cutoff. In an hour or two, we'll be back in contact. The rocket drifted in the serenity of silence. All of a sudden, an alarm began to ring. We're caught in some sort of tractor beam, David yelled. We can't move. The cabin was a confused jumble of lights, alarms, and yelling. Another ship is docking with us. David's voice was now hoarse from his shouting. In the midst of all this, Alan fainted. There was a clanging noise at the hatch and the door opened. Zap! Mark was shot. Zap! Kazap! Shane and David were shot as well. Shots had come from a tranquilizer pistol that was held by a short, helmeted, red-suited foreign soldier. He was standing with the second man. "We must get the plans for the hyperdrive," the short soldier said to his counterpart. "Yeah, but first we must get the astronauts onto our ship. No one shall interrupt our plans," the second taller soldier said. Taller soldier took Mark and Shane. The shorter took David. They walked through the hatch, through a tube, and into their ship. All the while, Alan had been in the shadows, bobbing around in zero gravity. He awoke hearing the clumping noises made by the soldiers' heavy magnetic boots. Oh no, he hissed. He floated over to a window and looked out. The ship was connected to a second ship by a tube. Alan recognized the symbol on the second vessel. "Oh my gosh," he exclaimed. "It's that foreign country that wanted our engine technology. They must have captured the others." He began to panic and bit furiously at his nails. "What'll I do? I can't just waltz in and save them. I'll get killed." Then he noticed the tranquilizer pistol left by the soldier. "I've got it," he said under his breath. He hid in the shadows until the soldiers returned. Now barefoot, the short soldier didn't have much to say before he was jolted out of consciousness by the pistol. His sidekick fell to the same fate in an instant. Yes, now to find the others. Alan grabbed the foreigners and floated through the tube to the other ship. He left the two there and found David, Shane, and Mark in the back of the ship. He dragged them into their rocket, and soon they woke up. "Whoa, what happened, Alan?" Mark said. "That's a long story. Quick, you gotta detach from the other ship." They closed their hatch, and with a hiss of steam they were free. The radios crackled after a while. "Explorer, are you there? Come in." "Explorer here, sir," David replied. "Everything's a-okay. Are you ready for hyperspeed? Over." "We're ready. Commence engine propulsion." Alan looked out of his window. He could see his images in it as well as the void of space. His blue skin and horns reflected back at him. What was this new planet called? Earth? Inferior life forms, huh? Well, they won't be any problem. If they resist, they'll be in for it. "Brace for hyperspeed," the general crackled. 3, 2, 1.
Thanks, Todd. And now we have Valerie Cronin, and she's going to do 2 short pieces for us, Valerie.
Hi. My name is Valerie Cronin, and I wrote 2 pieces.
I'm just going to attack you here. Okay, there. Did you do that?
The first one was really on sort of my view of the world, and then the second one is just on relationships. What happened to this world? Were we that bad? I see the children lying hopeless and defenseless on the streets. I live in a world where drugs are a common meal, where alcohol is a common drink. I live in a world where children are dying helplessly in the streets, where people have to steal things to get the necessities of life. I live in a dirty old town where every school is run down. In the schools there are drug pushers, gun sellers, killers. In the words of John Cicada, time heals. Well, as time has come and gone, all it has done is make matters worse. So when will time heal? It hasn't happened yet, so what makes you think it will ever happen? It's called believing. Believing that one day this world will become a utopia, a peaceful place to live. You have to believe. I look out my window at night and stare at the luminescent moon sailing across the night sky. And look, there's the Little Dipper. All my fears and worries are kissed goodbye. Then reality bites back, harder and stronger than ever before. It hurts so bad that you start to cry. Then you realize that maybe you can make a difference in this world of ours. Maybe you can be the leader the world has been looking for to change everything and bring about world peace. Maybe you're the one who God called on to show us what is right. Maybe you're the person to stop the starvation in the third world countries. Maybe time will heal. No one knows. No one can read the future. We sit and wonder what could have been, what might have been, what should have been. Will I be able to tell my grandchildren I was part of this sad world? Would I want to tell them, or would I be dead? I cry myself to sleep at night, crying because I'm sick and tired of the conniving people of this world, of the drugs, the alcohol, the abuse. There are people out there killing other people over stupid things like sneakers, yet all they get is a jail sentence. There are innocent children out there going to school and doing what they're told, yet they still get abused, physically. There are people out there dying on the streets or in their homes a slow and painful death because of drugs. Why? I think I made the right decision. I live in a world of many opportunities and responsibilities, and I've been through more than my share of life-threatening situations, but I turned out okay. I think together we can overcome this illness that the world has and unite each and every nation. And my second on the relationships. We've shared the good times and the bad, yet we still stayed together. Why? Were we inseparable? Did we love each other? Did we care enough to say goodbye? Why did we say goodbye? You say it was my mouth. It was too big. I told too many private things, and I realize that now. You said that we were too young for a long, serious relationship. I know that I'm young, but I wasn't looking for a marriage. I wanted a relationship. I wanted a lover and a best friend. I got one, but now I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. In order to finish this puzzle, I need the missing link. I want to mount this puzzle in a frame and hang it on the wall, but I can't. Ask any artist. You can't start something that you don't intend on finishing. If I didn't have any room on my wall, then I wouldn't have started the puzzle. But I had plenty of room, and I always will. I wish that I could reestablish this missing link, but it ran away and will never return. Some say love is a wonderful thing. Yes, love is a wonderful thing when you are in love. When you have no companion there to hold you in their arms when something goes wrong, it hurts. You have to go into a corner in your house and cry, and sometimes you have to cry yourself to sleep. You can call that best friend you found while the puzzle was developing, but what can they do? They say, "I'm so sorry," but they are not going to hop on their bike and pedal across town to comfort you. They have their own social life. Granted, that someone who will hold and comfort you does have another life, but they will try their hardest to make it over to your house as soon as possible. I have many problems, and there have been nights where I have cried myself to sleep or found a corner in my house. Those are such lonely nights. I need security, but the one person I need it from won't give it to me. I almost lost him as a friend, and then the puzzle would have been destroyed. After that, I would be experiencing many of those lonely nights. Every day I live on the edge, afraid that if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, then I'm gone. Maybe someday he will give me the missing link back, and then the puzzle will be perfect, at least for the time being. Puzzles are very, very delicate, though. One wrong move and you're missing a link again.
And now Adam Colson's going to read a story called Journey.
Hi, my name is Adam Colson, and the name of my story is Journey. Trip hailed a cab, but it sped by. He was not used to public transportation, but what he was used to was the good life, the limousines, the fame, the fans, and the woman. Those were good times, but they had dwindled into nothing as the years passed. Trip is now a faded, shadowy version of his former self. His blonde hair had begun to recede a few years ago, along with the glamour. The wrinkles on his now-aged face had came with the hair loss. And then his old outgoing personality had turned into almost complete solitude. This total metamorphosis of a once grand lifestyle was caused by 3 tiny letters, HIV. What does that mean, anyways? Human immuno something, but who cares? Another cab approached and came to a full stop, sort of like his life. Tripp jumped into the dingy vehicle. "Man, what happened to me?" he thought as his self-pity voice came to a halt. The driver checked Tripp out in the rearview mirror. "Where to, big guy?" "St. Beth's Clinic." He knew what was coming next. The questions. "Are you really Tripp McCain? Why'd you stop playing hockey?" "I don't care what everyone says. You were a better winger than McGillney." But this man was different. This man minded his own business as if he sensed the trouble that Tripp was facing in his life. But how could he not know me? In a way, the silence sort of annoyed Tripp more than the onslaught of questions usually did. "Come on, say something. He must be dirt poor and not on a television, or he's a crackhead. But then, what New Yorker isn't both?" He snickered to himself and caused the driver to give a cold glance in Tripp's direction. "So I hear you've got HIV. What? HIV? Tripp froze. The only people that knew of his disease were his doctors, his cat Dominic, and him, and his parents. God, how I wished he had taken that day back about a year ago. That afternoon at lunch, he saw a side of himself that he never even dreamed existed. Tripp completely exploded on his own mother and father, verbally assaulting them both. It was their fault anyways for not teaching me right and for sending me to that boarding school in Minnesota just so I could be a better hockey player. I was only 6, just 6. That killed him. But what they didn't teach him at that boarding school, that his parents could have taught him about, were the STDs. Now his parents were moving to Australia to start with a clean conscience where they had no ex-superstar HIV-positive son. He will probably never speak to them again, and their flight leaves tomorrow morning. You know, I had a huge fight with my dad about leaving my mom once. The driver said this out of nowhere. Is this guy a freak? How does he know? It was one of those fights where it seemed like it was bigger than the both of us. But I did end up calling back 2 weeks later. We talked it out, and I ended up apologizing to him. The next Wednesday, my father was killed in a car accident. I didn't speak to him again after the phone call. Every waking second, I thanked the good Lord for blessing me with the courage to call him back. Tripp wanted to scream at the man and at the same time wanted to drop to the floor and cry, but he didn't either. Then Tripp's entire life came into full perspective. How insignificant the hockey, the fame, and the argument had become. Tripp stared at the cab driver and awed, and then without missing a single beat said, "Here we are." Tripp's whole body was trembling as he stepped out of the cab. He took his wallet out and it fell from his quaking hands. "Sorry about that. How much do I owe?" The cab was gone. Tripp had heard no noise and only looked away for a second. He stood up and frantically spun to find the taxi, but no yellow checker cab was in sight. Tripp ran towards the stairs in a complete panic and Tripp going up them. He looked up and towering him like a colossus was a payphone. Tripp got up and clumsily put a lot of change in the slot and pressed the 0. The operator answered, Toronto, please." Tripp's voice was still shaking from the incident. The phone rang and a woman's voice answered. "Mom?"
And now, Melissa Angelo is going to tell us about a bakery.
Hi, my name is Melissa Angelo, and I'm reading my descriptive paragraph also about a bakery. The sweet aroma of bread baking, cookies cooling, and cakes being frosted fill my head the minute I walk in. Shiny glass counters show off the many different but colorful kinds of pastry. Time is buzz as the tempting pies come out of the oven. Children's eyes glued to their favorite kind of cookie help me try to decide what I want. Do I want the mouth-watering fudge, the fruit-filled pies, or perhaps the fresh-baked breads and cakes? Too many choices. My mind doing mental gymnastics finally stops as I hear a young lady say, "Can I help you?"
And to bring the first part of the program to a conclusion, Nikki Patty.
Good, yes.
As a little girl, my father and I were extremely close. I followed him everywhere he went, from the vegetable garden in the backyard to the hardware store for those final nuts and bolts. Many people were important to me as a child, but my father stood above them all. He was not only my role model, but my Saturday afternoon companion. I tried to emulate his every move. He called me his little shadow. But then, in early October of 1988, a chronic depression seized my father's spirit, changing him irrevocably. Each day, a piece of him disappeared. First his passion, then his anger, then his laughter and his smile, until so many pieces were gone that I could barely recognize him. I was 3 years old the one and only time I heard my father play the drums, but those images from my cousin's wedding reception are some of the clearest that I can remember. Last year, on New Year's Eve, my dad brought down the old set of drums that had been sitting in the attic for nearly 14 years. I sat and watched him in the center of our living room. He assembled the snare drum, the bass drum, and the cymbals with a long-lost diligence, recaptured now as he explained the parts to me one by one. When it was all put together, my father went over to the cabinet, full of old albums, and began looking. He perused the records with determination in his eyes and fingertips, until he found what he had been looking for. Sliding it from its gray jacket, he blew off the dust from the record and placed it on the turntable. He walked over and sat down on the maroon corduroy stool, taking the drumsticks in his hands.
My brother, my mother, and I sat in an anxious triangle around my father, exchanging glances, nods, and knowing smiles. The static from the old record was the only noise that disturbed the silence in the room. My father poised the wooden rods in the air, pearly tips pointed toward the ceiling, and, motionless as stone, waited for his cue. With a sudden sweeping movement of his arms, he brought the sticks down heavily upon the skins. The impact sent a wave of energy up the drumsticks, an energy searing the length of the sticks, exploding in my father's hands and body. I could almost see the rhythm coursing through his very veins and wondered if its furious power would consume him entirely, but it only stirred his blood to run faster. It pounded out his muscles, it pounded out of his temples, it pounded so feverishly, feeding off its own momentum. And so my father surged forth into Gene Krupa's Sing, Sing, Sing. As though the force of that initial downbeat had given life to all the notes thereafter, note exploded into fiery note. The sounds and rhythms were alive and seemed to be beating their life into him. I sat in silence, amazed that he could keep up with the legendary jazz great Gene Krupa. That, after all these years, my father failed to miss a beat, even catching the 4 syncopated hits of a cowbell. I had heard Sing, Sing, Sing many times before, but never once like this. This time the jungle-like rhythms had crept their way into my bones. The music swirled about me, enveloped me, pulled me in. As my dad played, something struck me in the way he moved, something in his eyes. It was him. I had not seen him in 7 years. He was revived by his own music, and now, as he sat before me, sweat forming in beads along the creases of his brow, I was reminded of how long he had been gone. I had forgotten how much I missed him, missed his enthusiasm that used to come with everything he did. For the first time in 7 years, he was passionate about something, violently, wonderfully passionate about something. My brother and mother left the room, and I sat alone on the couch, watching my dad. He never once looked up from his drums. To him, nothing else existed at this moment, and for a brief few moments, my world revolved around him once again. As the trumpet notes soared, I could feel his drum beats echoing through the room as the song approached its climax. With dizzying movements of his arms, he pounded out the impassioned last notes, his facial contortions a testament of his fervor. It was a tired, sweet fervor, but I could see he used every last bit of it as he belted out the final thunderous notes. Then it was over. His sticks had made their last impact. The final note hung in the air, lingering over our heads. For my father, the song was over now, but the notes were still ringing clearly in my ears. The static from the old record was the only noise that disturbed the silence in the room. I smiled as I looked at my dad, tired and spent. Wooden rods poised in the air, pearly tips pointed toward the ceiling, as he, motionless as stone, waited for his cue.
Some wonderful, loving tributes heard tonight. Now a little pause for station identification and all things good, sweet, and caloric. This is what I thought we would do, if this is all right with you. There are lots of things to eat and drink over here, and while you're doing that, I thought you might like to walk to one round table and another round table where some students are playing a game that is based on the Odyssey. So if you walk by Stephanie Lemieux or Cara Green or Megan Capocha, they will explain that game. And if you walk by Kay DeTono or Janelle Roberts, they will explain their game. And if you walk by the computer that's going to be rolling in a moment, Dan Sachs, Adam Seligman will explain a computerized movie review that they have prepared. So why don't we break for 15 minutes or so, enjoy coffee, goodies, and look at the games.
Dead grass, and brown slush created by the passing cars. I pause to allow the cold to shoot straight through to my bones, causing a slight wave of nausea, which quickly passes and allows me to trudge on. I quietly maneuver my way down the walkway in fear of disturbing the stillness of it all, breathing in deeply to detect the scent of the surrounding world thawing out. As I walk down the street, I start to look around in search of signs of life. But I see no rabbits scurrying into the brush and no friendly neighbors shoveling their driveways. I just see bare branches and muted tones, and everything seems so fake, so synthetic. And suddenly all the dead grass and bare branches and brown slush, and most of all the emptiness, starts to close in on me, as if the doors of this wasteland are closing and I can't seem to make my way out from behind them. I breathe in deep and slowly let it out, my warm breath clashing with the cold morning air, and suddenly I seem to have stopped moving. The bleak scenery seems to have stopped passing me by. My mind is as empty as the land around me, and I start to recite the names of the presidents like my shrink told me to when this happens. George Washington, John Adams. I pick up my right foot. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe. My left. John Quincy Adams. My mind begins to drift and I'm moving again. It starts to drift away from the bleakness and the deserted look of this cold winter morning. It's drifted to a different time, a different place, a different world. She used to take me out to eat every Sunday, usually to Denny's, and when she was in a good mood, we would tell them it was my birthday so I could get a free meal. We must have done that at least 3 Sundays in a row, and they never caught on. When I was little, I used to think it was so great that she'd always leave me at the table for a few minutes and let me pick anything I wanted off the dessert menu. Later on, I discovered it was only to give her a chance to slip outside and have a cigarette. Now, whenever I get a strong whiff of tobacco, I always seem to spin around, like I'm expecting her to be standing there, smiling, Denny's menu in hand, but she never is. Over the years, the smell of cigarette smoke mixed with Elizabeth Taylor's white diamonds became almost too familiar, like some sick perfume. She was real big on makeup, too, but there was one rule: her whole face was always made up in one color, the color depending on her mood. On a good day, it might be purple, which was always my personal favorite. Purple eyeshadow, purple eyeliner, purple lipstick. On a bad day, brown. She never changed her hair color, though. It was always a beautiful raven black, and she would never dream of cutting it. All the time I knew her, it always flowed right down to her butt. She always went out at night. She used to say that she was never a girl to miss out on a party. I remember her leaving the house one night in a long black velvet gown. I remember thinking how beautiful, big and beautiful she looked with all her jewels on and her hair up, and how far away she seemed. I remember rubbing my face up against her dress and how soft it felt, and how I never wanted to leave the sanctuary of the black velvet and go back to the babysitter who made me go to bed at 8. As I walked along, I realize I'm getting hungrier and it's getting colder. Suddenly, a big gust of wind comes my way, causing great pain to pass through my body. It's almost as if the wind was punishing me for letting my mind drift. I'm ravenous. I have no money. I let myself drift into a small building marked General Store. Bells chime as I walk in the door, and an old man who is reading the paper at the counter says hello. I don't answer him. I just think about how pathetic he is, about how he looks about 70 and is working in an old broken-down building marked General Store in the middle of nowhere, and how he probably reads everything in that paper and never gives it a second thought, and how everything has probably become so routine for him. I start to ask myself the same questions I ask myself whenever I see someone like this man. What if I end up like this? What if I never get an answer to all the questions I ask myself before I go to sleep at night? What if no one cares? I slip a Snickers bar into my coat pocket and make my way to the door. Bye, I whisper as I slip outside and start to run up the street. I hear the bells on the door of the store chime and the old man yelling, "Stop! Thief!" I hear his shoes click as he attempts to run up the street after me, but I know he'll never catch me. He's too old and out of shape. He'll give up soon. I slip into an alley and start to unwrap my candy. Once my father told me that when I was born, she wouldn't hold me or even look at me for 3 weeks. Then I think he realized he probably shouldn't have told me that, because he got a guilty look on his face and said, "She was probably just so happy to see you." He said that's probably why I don't like to be touched. I'm accustomed to being alone. She used to write poetry. Once I came across one of her notebooks. In one of her poems, she described the world as being full of cardboard people. I don't really know what that means. And all the time I knew her, we only got into one fight. I wanted to have an unchaperoned party, and she refused. It was a horrible fight. It was one of those fights where it seems like the fight is having you. She threw a wine glass at me. Later on, my shrink told me my request was perfectly normal, and it was just me being a kid. She didn't speak to me for 2 weeks afterward. When I look back on it sometimes, I can almost understand why she didn't want to be with me anymore. She didn't want to be here anymore. My dad says we're a lot alike. Maybe she just didn't want to live in a world where you have to lie and say it's your birthday to get a free meal. Maybe she didn't want to live in a world where a rickety old man would leave his store unattended just to chase you down for a lousy candy bar. Maybe she didn't want her life to become routine, and maybe she didn't want to live in a world full of cardboard people. It's even colder now, and the snow seems to be icing over. I shove my hands into my coat pockets, and I can feel the Snickers wrapper cold and smooth against my hands. As I round the corner, I make out the silhouette of the wrought iron fence in the distance. Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren. I'm running now. It started out a jog, but now I'm running. William H. Harrison. I burst open the gate to the yard. John Tyler. I slow down, out of breath. James K. Polk. My mind has come to a complete halt. I'm so close now. Zachary Taylor. I lay down next to her, the snow crunching, cold against my body. All I can think is I should have worn a heavier coat. Millard Fillmore. I look up at the stone. Lydia S. Tan, born 1960, died 1994. Franklin Pierce. Mom.
We get a lot of answers, don't we, about what children are thinking, what our children are thinking. And the next person is going to be Amy Tiro, and she's going to talk to us about a supermarket.
Hi, my name is Amy Terrio, and I'm going to read a descriptive paragraph from Miss Glenn's B. Block English class. A supermarket stands filled with customers going in and out for last-minute ingredients. Inside, babies cry and children whine for the goodies they just cannot have. A mixture of smells from deli meat to dog food hits your nose as you walk down each aisle, bumping into carriages that are going every which way. The lines get longer. We wait while the cashiers are madly pushing buttons and the bag is saying, paper or plastic.
And Alyssa Anderson, a senior, reading Verge.
This is in the style of Robert Frost, and I wrote it about 2 years ago. It was the very nature of the act, the cautious step into the untouched wood, that told me to be careful where I tread. Branches dried and cracked upon the ground, and halfway buried graves atop the soil, or woken and exhumed from cradling beds, and died a second time under my foot. Even gentle breezes across my face were altered by the breezes from myself. In tracing currents through a maze of brush, I could not help but see a tiny tree proudly bearing teacups of pink silk. They rustled in a fight to hold their own, then plunged to earth, admitting their defeat. I caught a cup and held it to my lips, a fool's attempt to kiss it back to life, and wondered just how many tragic deaths were victims of prevention of my own. My mind welled up with guilty mourning thoughts, imprisoned in their selfish human case. I hurried back to harshly gray concrete, crushing tiny sons of mother grass. Thanks.
And now another version of an Act 5 of A Doll's House, and this is Marcy McCullough, assisted by Linda Perry, right?
Okay, we have another Act 5 here to present to you. And again, we have the same two characters. Nora Helmer, who is a woman who has left her family and her home to embark on a life of her own. And in Act 5, she is speaking with her confidant, Christine Lind. In Scene 1, Nora is back living in her childhood home. She's in her old room, which is very plain, with a few of her old dolls sitting on the bed. The lighting in the room is dim, and the room is silent. Nora is sitting at her fairly plain-looking desk. She is writing diligently in what appears to be a journal. She is crying.
It has been a month since I've seen my children. I miss them dearly, but I don't regret my decision to leave. I feel as if I had to leave my children to evolve, because just as my father treated me as a child, so did my husband. I don't feel as if I ever got the chance to mature or educate myself. I was so very dependent on Travolta. I never knew how to rely on myself. Christine Lynn, this is Nora. This is the first time I've been able to call you.
Nora, is that you? Where are you? What's wrong?
Please calm down, Christine. I am back to where
I should have come a long time ago, back to my childhood home, so I can collect my thoughts.
What on earth do you mean? Do you realize what you have done? Do you know how upset your children in Torad are?
That is why I've called, Christine. I feel as if I need time to grow mature, though I do want to see my children. Would you help to arrange me to see my children?
What do you mean? How much time do you think you will take? How will you support yourself?
Christine, don't worry about me. I have put money aside. The important thing now is for me to see my children. I don't want them to feel abandoned. Will you help me to see them?
After a while of begging Christine, she finally agrees. Nora and her children meet at a little park a little way from Nora's house. It is very quiet and a bit chilly.
My 3 lovely children, I have missed you so much. I must explain to you, children.
Where have you been? Why did you leave? Do you not love us anymore? Were we bad children?
No. I need time so that I can grow myself as you children have. I need to receive some education before I can care for you. Please try to understand. I love you all. I will be back as soon as I can and feel I am ready.
Nurse, please bring the children back and make sure that Torvald hears nothing of this.
I will return to see you, my lovely children.
Nora, I have something to tell you. Torvald fired me from the bank as a result of your doings.
I am so sorry.
Now let me finish. I am in the process of looking for a job. All that matters now is you. I understand how you feel, but couldn't you have stayed home with your children and Torvald and received an education?
How could I? Torvald would never agree, and now would most likely not let me back in the house whereas I left. And even if he let me back in, I wouldn't go. I need to give myself a chance to feel independent. I will call you soon. I am sorry about your job. I will help you in any way I can. Torvald was in the wrong mind when he did this horrible deed. Goodbye, Christine.
Goodbye, Nora. Keep in touch.
They both walk in their separate ways, each having more to say, yet no words are spoken. In scene 3, Nora is back at her childhood house in her room, again writing in what appears to be a journal.
I feel at peace with myself more than I had before now that I've seen my children. I'm sure they still don't understand completely my reasons for my actions, but one day they will. When I receive my education my own way, when I learn to count on myself and feel I am strong enough and wise enough, then and only then will I go back and give my children the education they should have been brought up with and be the mother I should have been.
The doorbell rings. Good afternoon. I am Victoria Hardings, your tutor. You must be Nora.
What would the Victorians have thought of telephones like that? And now Danielle Muse is going to tempt our palates with Grandma's Magic Cookie Bar.
I wrote a character sketch about my grandmother entitled Grandma's Magic Cookie Bars. When the seasons grew cold and lonely, my grandmother's kitchen became warm and inviting. She could be found slaving away over a hot stove or mixing up a batch of delights. Always dressed and ready for cooking, she wore a decorative blouse that fit the occasion and a button-down sleeveless apron. Although her short, plump figure was tired and breathless, she made sure every new sweet creation was savory to the last bite. Her most favorite delight was called Grandma's Magic Cookie Bars. They were made only on special occasions like Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter. When the time came for them to be made, I'd join her in the kitchen. Even though my 8-year-old body didn't reach the countertop, I'd stand on a chair next to her. Grandma would start this ritual by preparing the cooking area very seriously and meticulously. She would lay out the cooking sheet on the surface of the counter and place the ingredients out around it. She would prepare me as well, with my own little apron and my own little spoon. I felt proud and special to be her cooking assistant. What made the cooking so memorable was her charm. She would sing cheerfully as she hobbled around the kitchen. She'd read off ingredients to me, and I'd listen expectantly. She measured the recipe out and added each amount to the dot. Her wrinkled hands would crush the graham crackers and crack the eggs like a professional. Each step was like a page being turned in a nursery rhyme. My favorite part of all this was when the chocolate bits were added. She would add the amount needed, setting aside several morsels. A look would be shared between the two cooks, and I held up my tiny little hand. Grandma's wincing eyes and frail lips brightened as she spoke in her teaching voice. Only one. I'd frown and persuade her to give me 5 morsels, but I still would eat them one by one. The stove would become hot and ready to cook our not yet masterpiece. Grandma would get out her oven mitts and gently pop in the gooey mix. As we waited for the batch to finish, we'd play guessing games and read books. All of this pulled it all together. These are what the memories are made of. When her inside instinct told her that they were done, she'd whisper to me, "Let's check 'em out." The bars would be golden brown and picture perfect. She brought them to eye level for me to see. I smelled the luscious bars of sweetness as she cut them into bite-sized squares. Excitement rushed through my already hyper body. The only one rule applied when the testing time came again. I will never forget the taste of those glorious creations. Even now, the thought of them brings smiles around the table. My grandmother has died, and her memories are slowly fading. Even as I grow older, she is always near my heart. Every holiday, her tradition is carried on, only now I bake them myself, following her exact motions and measurements. She passed her recipe to me, and I will pass it down to my little girl, in memory of my grandmother, Josephine Muse.
And now we have another freshman, and this is Emily Smith, and she's going to read her story called Living in Perfect Harmony.
Hi. Oh, sounds weird. All right. I wrote this in English, and it starts off with a poem. So, it's called Candle. Sparks, ignites, burns slowly, painfully slow, gets warmer, faster, then starts to flicker. Suddenly it burns stronger than ever, may survive storms, tackle obstacles. It weakens with time, its eyes have seen so much. Soon the wick has nothing left, and must go out, leaving darkness in the place of something so beautiful. When I finished my poem, a single tear fell. I feel bad for my candle. Oh well, it's only another poem, just meaningless words scratched out on paper. Can't worry about that now. It's time for Alternative Nation on MTV, my favorite show. As I turn on the TV, sound and color fills the room. Soundgarden's on. My favorite song. Hang my head, drown my fear, till you all just disappear. How many? Kate's on the phone. Called my mom. Okay, I'll grab it up here. I ran to my room and picked up the receiver. Hey, bub, what's going on? In a shaky voice, she replied, "Come over now, please." The phone dropped from her hand and clattered to the floor. How disturbing. I ran over as soon as I could. When I got there, Kate was freaking out. Her eyes were puffy and red from sobbing. Her father had just gotten arrested for drug use and attempting to harm a police officer. Kate was distraught. I hated seeing her like this. Since she became my best friend 6 years ago, her father's been arrested about 7 times. I never know what to say. After I left, I wandered down long, winding streets, trying to make sense of the world. Why do things happen? Who makes them happen? Too many questions, practically no answers. As I think about all the problems people have, Jim pops into my head. Jim's my boyfriend, and he has been for about a year. Speaking of Jim, I should call him. As soon as I found a dime on a payphone, I called. Ring, ring. I got it, Jim yelled as he sprinted to the phone. God, I hope it's Harmony. I haven't seen her for 6 hours, 17 minutes, and about 31 seconds. Oh, those eyes that remind me of the bluest sea. Those lips that I long to kiss. And how can anyone forget the blonde waterfalls of hair that go cascading past her shoulders to the small of her back? Gee, am I a little obsessive? Hello? Hey, baby, what's your sign? Capricorn. How about you, sugar cakes? I hear her giggle, music to my ears. We arranged to meet at Pickford's in 10 minutes. I run to get ready. As I hang up the phone, I think of Jim. His long blonde hair, pale blue eyes, and strong, broad shoulders are just frosting on the cake. He's the nicest, kindest guy I've ever met. Oh, I can't wait to see him. As soon as Jim came to Bick's, we ordered a baby apple, a pancake that's like a pie, to share, and I told him about Kate. He said he felt terrible, as did I, but we decided it would pass. After we ate, Jim walked me home. When I got inside, I took a quick glance at the clock. It's only 9:17. It seems so much later. Maybe I'll call Kate. Honey? I hear my mom calling me from the living room. She sounded upset. Honey, I just got a call from Kate's mom. Well, I guess Kate was walking around, and well, she was crossing Main Street, and she got hit by a bus, and she's dead, hon. I felt my body go totally numb. My stomach was a block of ice. I was cold, so cold. I could feel myself start to run, trying to find Kate, trying to find myself, trying to keep myself from leaping into the middle of the street to be left for dead. It's a dream. It's all a bad dream. Oh, why can't I wake up? I was on an emotional roller coaster and no one would let me off. A few days later, Kate's mom called me, wanting to know if I'd speak at her funeral. I said, yeah, of course, knowing it would mean a lot to her. I nervously prepared a poem to read. I'm not one for public speeches. And a few days later stepped up to the altar. Hang my head, drown my fear, till you all just disappear. Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? I could only hear tears running down people's cheeks, sniffles and moans. I was in a hospital. Everyone was dying, and the stench of carrion was overwhelming. I tried to ignore it as I began to read. My best friend, then 12. No cares in the world. Always fun and games. Loved to ride bikes, video arcades, movie theaters. Loved to laugh. Funny kid. Brightest eyes I'd ever seen. Suddenly dark. No more jokes, only grief for what was lost. Grief to all that loved her. Death took her away. Left sadness in the place of someone so happy. Joy to pain, laughter to tears. The memory in me burned strong. My best friend, then 12. This day would be the beginning of the end where my happiness was concerned anyways. I hurt myself today to see if I could still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. As I listen to Trent Reznor sing of death and pain, I feel so close to him, like we're connected somehow. As I take a long drag off my cigarette, something I never would have thought of doing a year ago, I think of how much I've changed, what I've become. I don't think people like it. Obviously Jim didn't, or he wouldn't have dumped me. No one talks to me anymore. When I'm this depressed, I feel like I could just lie down and do nothing. I am nothing. My mind is a clean slate, completely blank. My body is still as if I'm paralyzed. Signs and pictures have no meaning to me anymore. I live in a tomb called a body. I'm alone, and no one cares. Since I ran away from home 2 months ago, I have no money. In order to survive, I had to sell myself and my soul. Giving some cheap thrills to old men helps tide me over for a week or so. I live in a shelter amidst the slums of New York, but only in the winter. In summer, I sleep in parks or zoos. As the sun set along the Hudson River, I thought of my old life. I miss that happy girl. I think she goes by the name of Harmony. She was pleasant. Boy, how times change. Now she's unkempt, gross, and people call her scum of the earth. I need to get things back to how they were before. But how? I pondered this as the stars were lit and the sun died. Free concert, Central Park, everyone welcome. I wonder if that applies to me. It seems nothing ever does. What the heck. I don't have anything better to do. As I look to find a seat, ignorant people point and laugh. I think of how I used to be one of them, and I feel nauseous. Suddenly, someone gets on the mic. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first free concert of the fall season. This is met with applause. Today we are proud to welcome the Boston Symphony Orchestra. They will perform their English rendition of Carmina Burana. This was met by more applause as the man sat down. I didn't know it yet, but the next song would change my life. I glanced at the program. Number 1, O Fortuna. Sounds pretty dull. All of a sudden the park exploded with sound. I listened intently to the lyrics. O fortune, like the moon ever changing, rising first, then declining. Hateful life treats us badly, then with kindness, making sport with our desires, causing power and poverty alike to melt like ice. Dread destiny and empty fate, an ever-turning wheel, who make adversity and fickle health turn to nothing, in the dark, and secretly you work against me, how through your trickery my naked back is turned to you unarmed. Good fortune and strength are now turned from me. Affection and defeat are always on duty. Come now, pluck the strings without delay, and since by fate the strong are overthrown, weep ye all with me. I then understood. Everyone is in charge of their own destiny, and our lives will be what we make them. Now it seems so clear. It was so easy. Why didn't I see it? Oh, that doesn't matter now. I'm going home. After Harmony made sense of her life, she returned home. When she got there, the first thing she did was call a therapist. After she made an appointment, she took a trip to the cemetery to pay her respects to the best friend she lost 5 years before.
Sometimes people don't realize how brave you have to be an author, and a writer, and a reader. And now, Ben Frank. Ben, are you here? Reading Untitled.
We stood and watched this, watched as the war was lost. We sat by passive to avoid fighting at all costs. All we had to speak of was a war that they had won. I guess we never realized exactly what was done. In our bedrooms that night, there was no discussion of love. There were no thoughts about those that had been left, no whispered feelings about those that were dead. Twice in a day, I heard a child asking why, and to this question, I heard the answer being denied. These children shook their heads no. They said it cannot be. We have been taught better. Why can't you people see? This hit me rather incisive, and I thought, how can a child see so much and smile, though only 3? I want to see through the child's eyes. I want to know, what can I find? I need to know why I am so blind. There are a few things left to speak of, the war and what was lost, and the lives that have been turned off. The war to stay young, the war to remember what we learned. Innocence was lost, it always is, but the thing that we need most, our ability to love, was left for the privileges of growing up. Like hate and bitterness, wealth and power and wanting more, looking to the horizon from the 18th floor, looking out beyond the weeping and the poor. Within all this, we do get our deserved rewards. When we turn 68, we get to retire. When we turn 78, someone else holds a spoon for us. When we become 88, people look the other way. And at 98, in our coffins we lay. Do you think anyone will remember you, all your riches and all your acts? Do you think your kids will remember to thank you? Believe me, they'll forget you too. In our bedrooms there was no love, just a lot of hiding and angry whispered lies, the things that ruin all life and make us want to lay down and die.
And Megan Butler reading Lily.
Hi, I'm Megan Butler, and I'll read my short story. Streaks of pink emerged from an indigo sky, and a young girl walked down a forest trail. She walked quickly, with her blonde braid bouncing behind her. Her name was Lily Reinhold, and she was trying to prepare herself for what lay ahead. She wondered if she would be strong enough to do it. Resolutely, she walked on. This was a matter of life and death. Lily was 14 years old, and she had lived a fairly normal life until about 3 years ago, when Germany invaded her little country of Denmark. German soldiers became commonplace in every part of the country, including her tiny hometown, Gilleleje. Gilleleje was a fishing village, and Lily loved to walk along the shore and gaze across the sea, to Sweden. There were no Germans in Sweden, and Lily tried to remember when Denmark had none of those grim-faced soldiers with their spit-shined boots at every street corner. Lily never realized, however, that there could be any usefulness in Sweden's neutrality until 1941, 1 year ago. At that time, she learned that her parents were part of the Danish resistance. Resistances, which were common in many countries occupied by Germany, were secret organizations that took any and every opportunity to discourage the German army. The most recent mission of the Danish resistance, however, was to save that country's Jewish people. The Germans were beginning to round up Danish Jews, taking them to unknown places. When the nearly powerless Danish government heard about this, however, it immediately alerted the resistance. The resistance undertook the job of finding hiding places for the Jews in the homes of some courageous Danes. Soon, however, the Germans became suspicious of the new dark-haired members of Danish families. The resistance then formulated another plan of saving the Jewish people. By shipping them across the sea to Sweden in the boats of Danish fishermen, they would be safe. Gilleleje was one of the many towns that would serve as starting off points for the mission. Lily's own Uncle Friedrich was one of the fishermen that would ship the Jewish Danes across the water. Lily was astonished to hear of the heroic deeds performed by her uncle and other fishermen in her town. She had always thought of these men as normal, everyday citizens. Little did she know how soon her own turn to be a heroine would be. As Lily walked on the trail that morning, she wished that she could talk to her parents once again, if only for a moment. She could not, however. Her parents had been run down by German soldiers 6 months before, after their dealings with the resistance had been discovered. Thinking of this made Lily walk more quickly. She would finish this for her parents' sakes, and for the sakes of little children waiting in her Uncle Friedrich's boat. Lily remembered when her uncle had asked for her help, shortly after her parents had died. One voyage to Sweden involved saving the lives of some little Jewish orphans from Copenhagen, whose parents had already been killed by Germans. A chaperone was needed on the journey, and Lily's mother, Els, had originally been assigned to the job. Friedrich asked Lily to take the job after her mother's death, since the mission could not be postponed. The Germans were becoming more and more suspicious of the mysterious disappearances of Danish Jews. This early morning, Lily was going to her uncle's boat. She did not think that she was brave enough for the job. How could she be compared to her courageous parents? However, she would do it for her Uncle Friedrich, and for the children. Surely, she must try for their sakes. Lily looked up to see the Galilee harbor in the distance. She suddenly wished with all her heart that the war had never happened, that the Germans had stayed in their own country, that those little children were back in Copenhagen, and most of all, that her parents were alive. Oh, how she wished that they were there with her. Lily's eyes smarted for a moment, but she kept moving. There was no turning back. When Lily reached her uncle's boat, she called for her Uncle Friedrich. He stepped outside the cabin and motioned for her to step into the boat. Once inside the cabin, he scolded her. "Lily, I thought that you would have known better. There are soldiers all over the harbor. If they become suspicious, please be more careful from now on." "I'm sorry, Uncle Friedrich," said Lily, "and I should have thought before I spoke. Mother always told me to, but I never listened." Her voice trailed away, and her face looked troubled. "Shh," said her uncle softly. "I shouldn't have scolded you. Come, we must hurry." "But Uncle Friedrich," she said, glancing around the small cabin, "where are the children?" "They are here," said Friedrich, pointing to the floor. He stooped down and lifted up a seemingly innocent drain-pipe. Suddenly, a door slid away to reveal 6 little children, who looked frightened out of their minds. They wore heavy sweaters and jackets that were 3 times too large for their little bodies, probably borrowed from generous Danes. One little girl, with the most beautiful brown eyes that Lily had ever seen, stared up into her own blue ones. She looked scared, but also very proud. She stood her own ground and wore the hand-me-down clothes like a princess would wear her regal attire. At that moment, Lily knew why her parents had risked and lost their lives. It was to save innocent children like these, who had done nothing more than live their lives, yet were treated like the world's problems by some, and forgotten by others. Lily decided then that these children, and all the other innocent people persecuted by Germany, must not be forgotten. The time had come for people to stop turning their heads away from Germany's evil, and to start fighting back. Lily went on that night to save those orphans, but this did not mark the end of her role in the resistance. She voluntarily made 8 other trips like it. In 1945, when the war ended, Lily was 17. Looking back on all the journeys that she had made in the past 3 years, one in particular stuck out in her mind. This journey did not take long. In fact, she hadn't needed to move an inch. Lily Reinhold's mind, however, had traveled many miles when she looked into the brown eyes of a little heroine on the dawn of a new day in 1942.
And now Carrie Chapman, reading 3 short pieces. Here's Carrie.
Hi. All right. These are 3 original poems that I wrote, and I'm going to read them backwards from the program there. This one is one I wrote. It's called "The Sleepy Little Princess," and it's for my mom and my dad. I'm loud anyway. Okay. Okay. I am a princess with emerald dresses of pure silk, my hair flowing just like a foamy waterfall and eyes that shine like celestial sparks. Heart of pure ice, I sleep all day. Unthaw my heart and please wake me up. Woken up, eyes anew, days slither by just out of grasp, heart failing to thaw. If I had known it would be like this, I wouldn't have asked to be a rose. The king and queen hold me close and I finally feel warm, my block of ice dripping away. Drip by precious drip, it goes away to reveal a source of love, etched in solid gold. My eyes fall and I sleep again. Sweet sun kisses her rose hue. My eyes now flutter and I awake a smile. A soul, I have found it, love. Thank you. Thank you for waking me up. Okay, this next one I wrote. I think every poet who writes, they write about their first love and how they lost it. I wrote one too, and this isn't it. All right, this one I also entered into a contest in Maryland about 3 weeks ago. I'm still waiting for a reply. If I win, then I'm sure you'll see me on the front page of the item. If not, then you won't. This one's called "The Streetlight." I stepped out into the streetlight and the snow was falling lightly. No cars were on the street because it was so late. I heard a light music in the back of my mind and I thought about you for just a moment. I looked up and saw the outline of perfect snowflakes against the humming yellow light. All was quiet and all was peaceful. For a slender gray moment I wasn't cold. and I felt that breeze. It carried a faint scent of yourself, and I breathed it in like I had done so long ago before. I had to get home. It was late, and I was suddenly cold. This last one is called Teenage Mind Scatter. And for this one, I'm going to have to use not the mic because I have to stand up for it and kind of move around. This poem is basically dedicated to anyone who's been 15 and told, don't worry, it'll get better with time. And this is also dedicated to my two best friends, Mitch and Heather. 19 past 10 on a school night, and it's not so late, I guess. Besides, I couldn't sleep anyway. I have so much on my mind and my heart and my soul, and just so much in me. Music, it can't get rid of it, and sometimes talking, it just doesn't seem to help. It's here. Perhaps 3, possibly 4. Perhaps more. Imagine. Crying. Me. What for? What for? I guess it's all chemistry homework that's not understood, and does he feel the same? And does this shirt match? And how's my hair today? Is that another zit? Test? What test? Oh, that test. How do these jeans look? Do I look fat from the side? No? Good. Good. I'm glad. That rain on the roof. It sounds so pretty. Big and wild, and almost as if it's inviting, and asking me out there with it to dance and to sing and to hold myself on the roses and to spin right on the dewdrops and feel free. And I want to, and oh, I can't tell you how much I want to, but I can't. I can't. I have things to do. I have homework and a music lesson on Tuesday and poetry to write. And now it's 23 past 10 on a school night. I have that test tomorrow, and I should be getting to sleep. I don't want to cry. Sometimes. I feel like I have to. I don't want to cry. But sometimes. Being 15, you know.
I promise I won't say it, Carrie. What you said. And now we have Suzanne Began and Erica Starella reading some poems about winter, which I hear is coming back tonight.
Hi, I'm Sue Began, and recently in Mrs. McDonough's C Block English class.
Thank you, Sue Began. Get a little closer. No, you have to get a little closer.
All right, spent a lot of time working with winter imagery. We read Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton and selected poems by noted poets. Our study of winter imagery and the recent snowfall we endured this winter inspired us to write this winter imagery booklet. The first poem I'd like to read is called Stopping at My Window on a Snowy Morning by Craig Henshaw. When I was young, winter snowfalls were always fun. Excited, I'd wake up early, jump out of bed, and look out the window. I'd see my yard covered in snow, tree branches weighted down to their breaking point. The sparkling icicles dangled from the roof. I'd see cars cautiously making their way through the snow-clogged streets, mountains of snow that I would soon conquer. Things were softened by the deep powder, details on the ground no longer visible. I'd think of sledding downhill in my neighbor's yard into the street, on my red plastic sled with the black handles. Sitting with my legs straight out, holding onto the rope like the reins of a horse. My mittens, red with a snowflake design. Looking down the hill, past the toes of my gray boots, and into the street. Making sure no cars were coming, then inching towards takeoff. Whoosh! An exciting run past my friends, up over a snowbank into the street, where my sled would grind to a halt. Rolling out, going back up the hill, I'd think of forts, snowball fights, icicles, shoveling, snowmen, and cocoa. I'd yell, "It snowed!" and wake my sister to show her the amusement park outside in our yard. The next poem I'd like to read is called Murder by Lauren Murphy. In the clear funnel of icy air, pink like porcelain flesh birds, standard black shapes like commas or spades, rush to the air, blood clots to a wound. Spiraling violently, vulturous beasts. Death lies here, pale and silent. Harmless pastel markers, Necco wafer colors. Roses and Jesus and the bleeding heart of Mary, innocuous and cold. The birds are disturbing, faint bruises to memory. They sense the tension and stillness. Alarmed at the wonder, they circle overhead. Dark angels without fury lurk in the air.
My name is Erica Estrella, and the first poem that I'll read is called Icy Snow Ride by Jill Siebeking. At the top of the hill looking down, the frozen vista seems icy cold and uninviting, waiting to be conquered. The frigid wind blows against the once warm cheeks. Snowflakes no longer melt upon my eyelashes. The pain of frostbite eating away at my ears makes me long for a warmer hat in the heat of a fireplace. Picking up speed, snow sprays in my face. My eyes close a bit tighter. Bump after bump, trying to throw you from the sled, hands clutch a bit stronger. Brushing away the sharp pain of ice stinging your face. A great weight feels like it has been lifted from your shoulders. Falling back into their fluffy cotton, a deep laugh rumbles from under the bulk of layers of clothes. Soon laughter rings out through the cold air. Finally conquered. The other poem is Expedition by Evan Anderson. My body's wrapped and muffled tight against the cold of night. Only fingers, feet and nose feel the burning wind that blows. Stars glitter in black ink sky, while frozen figures hurtle by. Below are trails which dip and curl and decorate this wintry world. Exhilaration, a brief hesitation before the final thrill, as I plunge ahead in my battle with the hill. Blurring shapes pass by me in whiteness of the night, but I'm fixed and focused, cutting left and right. Carving through the crystal seas, I zigzag among the trees. Burning skin and lungs on fire, skiing is my heart's desire. Thank you.
Before we have our final two Wakefield presentations, I would like to invite our Japanese friends if they would like to come over. And one of our visitors is in a lovely kimono, and we have, I believe, a visitor who is going to share a poem with us. So if your Japanese is better than mine, you could help me. Isn't it wonderful to have visitors here from so very far away for us to learn from them and maybe a little bit from us. Welcome.
My name is Junko from Osaka, Japan. This is Japanese kimono. I am here with kimono to show one of the tastes of Japanese culture, in addition to haiku. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shusuke Kabeya from Nagoya, Japan. I'd like to introduce a Japanese haiku to you. Haiku is a kind of poem which consists of 17 Japanese characters, and it leaves us in deep contemplation. I'm reading a haiku written by the most famous poet in Japan, Basho Matsuo. I will read a haiku in Japanese first and then in English. 古い池や河津飛び込む水の音 Old pond, frog jumps in, and the sound of water. let's see. I will explain about it. When Basho Matsuo was at the old pond, it was very quiet around him, and then when he heard the sound of water, he thought that was very beautiful, so he wanted to leave his feeling as a haiku. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Noriko Asada. I'm from Matsuyama, Japan. Let me introduce haiku to you. When I eat a pasmon, the bell starts ringing at Horyu's Temple by Seki Masaoka. かき食えば鐘が鳴るなり法隆寺 in Japanese. Horyuji Temple is the oldest temple in Japan. This haiku means the atmosphere is quiet and peaceful. Pasmon stands for autumn. The scene is evening. The sky is high and clear. It's a very beautiful scene. But the sounds of bell break the silence. But listen with grace. Thank you.
That's amazing. And now we have Meg Lemieux, who's going to share some poetic thoughts musically.
Gotta sort of adjust myself here. Okay. Hi there. Okay. This song is entitled Yellow, because that's how I felt when I wrote it. Eyes around the room, watch her move. Pale yellow dress mingles with cocoa skin. The moon provides a brilliant crescent spotlight along the southern waters. Well, the air is warm, the shrimp is sweet. Come on, take my hand, somebody dance with me. Well, Zadako plays and she dances. Zadako plays and she dances, she dances. Well, Zadako plays and she dances round the room. She said, well, on a night like this, I could dance till dawn. So she dances on. She dances on. Her hair falls soft on her shoulders. Young men lean and they whisper how they long to be part of her world. Well, she's barefoot and she's delicate as china, as though each toe touches ivory key. And the women jealous as the ebony. Perhaps
perhaps it's just envy. Well, that's all it is for me. If it were me, could I dance with the night air? If it were me, could I capture stares like her? Or would I just stumble through her rhythmic world? Yeah, well, Zydeco plays, she dances. Zydeco plays and she dances. Zydeco plays, she dances around the room. And she said, on a night like this, I could dance till dawn. So she dances on. I could never dance that long. Eyes around the room fixed upon her, she reaches, dancing with the moon. That's it.
And for our final offering tonight, a presentation of A Modest Proposal by Alexis Pushkar.
Drivers are of three orders: slow, fast, and reckless. Speed is relative, and if you're from Montana, it is irrelevant. In the heavily populated state of Massachusetts, where neighbors back into each other's trash barrels and trip over the kid next door's bicycle, someone is always going 20 when your contractions are 5 minutes apart. But then again, when you are leisurely changing into the left lane of a major highway, Billy Bob Speed Bob, driving his flashy red Camaro, shoots forward from a dot on the horizon to a menace right beside you, forcing you to swerve back into your own lane. However, not all fast drivers are reckless. Contrary to popular belief, most fast drivers have been race car drivers in previous but very short lives. Consequently, they are quite sensible of all the dangers. Reckless drivers are generally women who need to update their makeup or to wipe their sticky toddlers' mouths, or adolescent boys with a day-old license who are driving either a girl or their friends home. The degree of recklessness can be measured by the number of watermelons which fit comfortably in the dent on the passenger side door before the car is impounded. Driving in Massachusetts requires daily dealings with all of the above quite frequently. The average driver is a victim of Ethel Easygoing, Billy Bob Speed Bob, Rick the Slick, or Tiffany the 20-something. I am highly sensitive to the problems which these members of society cause for the rest of us, and since I have a year's driving experience under my belt, no pun intended, I feel I can, with great modesty, put forth for your just consideration my well-intended ideas on the subject. Ethel Easygoing, sweet though her pink cheeks and matching pink hair are,